Tuesday at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center is when we get Ryan Day and defensive coordinator Jim Knowles to talk about the game that just happened for Ohio State, which was a 20-12 victory over Penn State, where one of the best defensive performances by this program in 4 years. I mean, just a kind of a total domination at times of Penn State, but then also spinning things forward to what's coming up next, which is Wisconsin, and even farther into the future. And I thought Jim Knowles got a good question today, which was kind of how do you process coming off of a performance that complete, and where do you want to see this defense get better? And he kind of gave some thoughts out there, getting better against motion concepts and things like that. But Steven, starting with you, where do you want to see this defense still take another step over this next month? Because Michigan, which is performing as complete as any team in the country right now on both sides of the ball, is always going to be looming out there on November 25th.
I thought they were at a really high level. Like, let's just put it at they were at like a 10 against Penn State. And this is not about what Penn State's offense, it's just about Ohio State and what they were able to do. Like, I get it. Penn State was very incompetent at times offensively. Ohio State was part of the reason why. I thought it was a 10. Can they stay at 10, regardless of who the opponent is? Whether it's Wisconsin, whether it's Rutgers, whether it's Michigan State, Minnesota, just stay there. That was the thing about 2019. Chase Young did that every week. It didn't matter if it was Miami, Ohio, or it was Penn State. Every week, Chase Young was Chase Young. Jeff Okudah was Jeff Okudah every single week, and on down the line here. JT Tuimoloau talked about that when we were down at Big Ten Media Days, and he continues to talk about that, the consistency. He has had at least 5 pressures in every game since they've come back from the bye week. He's had a sack in every game since they've come back from the bye week. Can he continue that pace? Can Jack Sawyer continue to trend upward? Can Tyleek stay here? Because consistency's always been the thing with him. The back end, even without Denzel Burke, Jermaine Matthews was awesome. And Jim Knowles talked about him on Tuesday, but even he was at a loss for words trying to describe how well Jermaine Matthews played. Jordan Hancock, the safeties, all down the list here. I thought everybody was at a 10. Can they stay consistently at a 10 regardless of who the opponent is in front of them? Because they're not going to play a good offense for a while, so we can't gauge them off of whatever the offense they're going against is doing. We have to gauge them off of themselves, and this is now their standard. The Penn State game is their standard. Can they do that for the next 5 weeks and get themselves into the playoff? Because that's all I want to see. I think the little detail stuff it's there, yes, but the overall thing is stay here for the next month.
Yeah, the one thing that is hanging out there for me is run defense, and Jim Knowles mentioned that today, like when they're getting motion against, and like Steel Chambers was talking about this a couple weeks ago, that he felt like they had some eye discipline issues. He specifically as a linebacker, maybe Tommy Eichenberg, his buddy, he was sort of pulling into that a little bit. I think those guys at that point, and maybe still right now, are a little bit adjusting to this change that's happened with the defense this year, where now they are not getting sent as like downhill weapons as much anymore, and they have to make different reads and react in a different way to that. And I think it's still a work in progress. And they've got they've got an opponent coming up on Saturday with a really good running back in Braylon Allen. He's coming off of like 140 yards and a touchdown or something against Illinois. Like, they know he can be a workhorse and can break big plays. He did it last year here in the stadium, like a 75-yard touchdown run. So do you start finding ways, and they did it against Penn State, like they bottled up, I thought, for the most part, both of those guys pretty good. They were still getting gashed out, though, on some longer runs. And if the same run gashed out by Blake Corum, maybe Donovan Edwards, although he hasn't had the greatest year this year, but like if those guys are doing it to you with Michigan, I think it could be more dangerous. I think they could get bigger plays off of those same concepts. And what do you do now as a defense between now and then to just firm up that run defense? I think it's still the place where this team is I don't want to say soft, maybe the most vulnerable. Maybe that's the thing. And against Michigan specifically, I think you want to stop that run and do what they did to Penn State. Put this game on J.J. McCarthy's shoulders and make him have to beat you straight up on 2nd and 3rd down. Andrew, where do you still want to see this team improve defensively?
So this is hard because when the defensive coordinator, when the first thing out of his mouth about where can you improve, if he says we have some things with motion that we need to clean up, you're in a pretty good spot. If that's the first thing that he's talking about, he's not saying, run defense or like he's saying motion that we need to pick that up better. So I want this to sound in that kind of ballpark of, okay, we are at a different level. Like we are operating at a different level here.
We're nitpicking a little bit at this point, which you couldn't do with this defense the last couple of years. It was like, when are they going to make a big step? Now it's more like, how are they going to like smooth the rough edges?
I would even say that this is like a challenge to Ohio State's defense is turnovers, and more importantly, Can you score on defense? Because that, I think, would be kind of like the final boss of Ohio State's defense. Because we've talked about, hey, look, Ohio State allowed 26 points in 2 top 10 games. That's remarkable. They also only scored 37 points in those games, which if you would have said Ohio State scored 37 points in 2 games going into the year, like combined, we would have had a lot of questions about this offense. But the defense has played so well that they are just operating at a different level. So you look at this defense and see, okay, what if your offense gets into a slog again? What happens if you have another Notre Dame game that ends 17-14? What happens if the Michigan game ends 20-17? You know what's going to swing that? When you get a turnover at Michigan's own 30-yard line and immediately you're in field goal range. You don't have to worry about moving. You could lose 2 yards and you are in field goal range. Or you score and all of a sudden, think about how scoring changed that Maryland game. It was, that game was 10-10 at halftime. It very well could have been 17-10. It very well could have been 17-3 or 13-3. And Maryland kind of had some problems down the stretch. You can change games by creating turnovers and by scoring. So again, this is like the highest level of defense that you can get to, but that's what we're talking about with Ohio State. So my challenge, it's a challenge basically to them, I think, is if you can score defensively, you can really help out your offense, because if the offense is going to have some issues and some lasting issues throughout the course of the season, that is what's going to take Ohio State to just a completely different level as an entire football team, because then the pressure's off the offense a little bit. You could maybe experiment with some more things. It's not as big of a deal if you have some things go wrong offensively. And the defense is going to be able to, you know what the defense is at this point. So scoring and creating turnovers, that I think is the next level for this team.
Takeaways are so unpredictable, but I don't know how Davis Igbenogson doesn't have a pick by now. It feels like he's so close, and he's not the only one. There's been guys who are really close, and I think that's a good point, Andrew. If they can convert the near misses into actual takeaways, especially in a game that crucial, that could be what flips it. A lot more discussion about this defense on Buckeye Talk throughout this week, and get the text 614-350-3315. Wednesday night, we'll be back here at the Woody, and when we see guys coming off the practice field, we'll let you know how this roster looks going into this game at Wisconsin on Saturday.